Kia ora koutou. Welcome to today's board talk. So thank you so much everyone who is joining us. This board talk is on what you need to know on the Incorporated Societies Act changes. So yeah, really great to have each of you join us, and hopefully it's a valuable conversation for you to get some takeaways from. For those who have not had the opportunity to meet yet, my name's April. I'm the Learning and Development Manager, Kai Whakahaere Tupuranga for Community Governance Aotearoa. For any of you who are Board Talks regulars, you might be expecting to see Rose here. Unfortunately, Rose is under the weather today, so I'm kicking off the board talk, and then Stephen Moe will be stepping in to lead the panel today. So um, should be a really good talk. Thank you so much, Stephen, for stepping in there. Bit of housekeeping. Please just keep yourself on mute throughout the Zoom call. There'll be a number of us on the call, so best to use the Zoom chat for any questions that you might have, and feel free to ask questions of our panel as we go throughout the talk today. You can also, a few of you are introducing yourselves in the chat, so feel free to use the Zoom chat to share who you are, where you're joining in from. We'd love to see who's with us today. Today's board talk will be recorded and will be posted on our website and sent out following the talk. So there's all our previous board talks you can access on our website as well. So this will be added to the collection. Since board talks started, so a bit of background about board talks, we've had over 5,400 registrations. So many of you joining us, many fantastic guests, and covered topical things for our community of not-for-profit governors. Our past board talks are available through our website with links to YouTube and Spotify, so do check those out also. So who we have on the talk today? So our conversation is going to be led by Stephen Moe of Parry Field Lawyers, and we have a fantastic panel. So Joe Kelly from Independent Governance Services, or IGS, Julie Hood from Sport New Zealand, and Rachel Woodhouse from Bank of New Zealand, BNZ. So thank you so much to each of you for joining us. I will hand over to Stephen to kick off our panel talk today. Thank you.
Well, tēnā koutou katoa. It's really wonderful to be here. Looking forward to being able to share with you today. And this is an important topic. There are about 24,000 incorporated societies, and about 15,876 have yet to re-register. I know because I asked company's office, I was curious. So that's a lot of groups that haven't yet re-registered. So I hope that this session is really going to help you, empower you to know what you need to do. We're going to go around the room here quickly and just introduce ourselves. So I'm a partner at Parry Field Lawyers, helping lots of incorporated societies and charitable groups, and looking forward to hosting this. And I also happen to be in the Koru Lounge in Queenstown, so apologies if there's ever a little announcement. But Rachel, could we start with you? Just a little bit of background. What's brought you to this session? What context do you bring, and some of the things that you might be seeing? Thank you.
Yeah, kia ora, and lovely to be here. So I'm Rachel Woodhouse, Senior Partner at Bank of New Zealand, and I look after the not-for-profit sector across the bank and some of our more complex clients. And I too, and we're really looking at our own data now around incorporated societies and how many have re-registered, and some of the challenges that will present to their banking for those who don't get re-registered. So really hoping to provide some education and help in any way we can.
That's great. It's going to be great to have your perspective, because I think one of the questions is, what if we don't re-register? What will it mean for our banks? Julie, I've been really impressed with Sport New Zealand and all the work that's gone on, what you've been doing. Can you give us a bit of background? What do you bring today?
Yeah, kia ora tātou. Ko Julie Hood toka ingoa no Otatahi aho. So I'm beaming in from Christchurch. It's really sunny, but it doesn't seem to be coming up on my screen. So apologies if I'm a bit dark. Kei Sport New Zealand ihi e Aotearoa ho e mahi ana he lead governance and planning consultant. So yes, I'm the lead governance and planning consultant for Sport New Zealand, and part of that is to lead the work over the past 3 years or so, helping all of our sector organisations get across the line at the right time with the resources that they need. So delighted to be here. So nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful, thank you. And there's a lot of sports groups impacted by this, so really keen to get your perspective.
Thank
Joe,
you.
over to you.
Thank you, Stephen. Kia ora tātou. I am Jo Kelly from IGS. We deal with all things governance, primarily start in the company secretarial realm, but as governance goes, you end up dealing with all sorts of things. So incorporated societies is one of our big focuses at the moment to get everyone across the line. And it's not not an easy topic, being a bit legal, to help people get there. So we're really pleased to be able to provide any kind of resource like this to steer people in the right direction. So let's get into it.
That's great. And the way we're going to do this is I've got a series of questions. I'm going to pose them to the panel, and they're each going to contribute if they have an answer or if they want to supplement what someone else says. But we would love to have your questions as well. So in the chat, we know you know how to use the chat function. Please type the hardest questions you've got. We want to get some really good ones today. So let us know in the chat what you want us to be asking. But the opening one is quite simple. Why are we here? Why does this matter now? Like, what's going on? What is the risk if you don't re-register? Rachel, do you want to maybe kick us off with that, and then others can contribute?
Yeah, absolutely. So why we're here now is you've still got time and there's still some great things you can do. The closer we get towards next year, the less time you have to make some really important decisions for your organisation. And the real risk is if people don't re-register, that they will lose their IOD numbers. That will mean they won't be able to use their existing entities to collect funds, and there's a real likelihood that they won't be able to access bank accounts. So some real implications if we don't get cracking.
Great. Anyone else want to add something? Yeah.
Yeah, I can jump in there. So I mean, so we're here because essentially the new Act has been enforced since 2022, and you need to be re-registered under that by the 5th of April. And so you might be operating under the older Act 1908. And I think the fact that it was that long ago that the Act was put in place is a good example of why it needed to be updated. So there's a bunch of minimum requirements that have changed. There's things that need to be not just done right in your constitution redrafting, but also actually how you operate going forward. And some of them are quite basic. Three members minimum on a committee, and your number of members of your society in itself has dropped from 15 to 10, which is great. But your duties as directors or officers or board members have increased. And that's, I think, the overwhelming part for people, because you're often there as a volunteer. And so now you actually have all this extra responsibility, and it's not really what you signed up for, essentially, is the message we're getting. So it's about actually making it easy, and the first step is getting your constitution right, getting re-registered, get yourself across that line, because you don't actually have a huge amount of time when you factor in the Christmas holidays, etc. And then also concurrently or after that, look at getting your operations in order is sort of that's how I would guide people to break it down into easier, more manageable steps. We can get into some of those specifics a little bit further in, but one of the key concepts that's come out in the change is that the society can't be set up for the purpose of gain for the members themselves. So it's a true not-for-profit structure, and that really impacts your ability to distribute your assets and your property if you wind up, which a lot of societies sort of hope would go back to the members. So there's that sort of thing to think about. You need to nominate another not-for-profit entity that those assets would go to. So we can get into some of those details later, but the risk is, as Rachel highlighted, and I feel like it almost does come down to the banks, how quickly they might act on those that haven't re-registered as at 5 April. Will bank accounts be shut down? You can't sign contracts in the name of the society. So therefore, if you're signing a contract, you're actually signing it in your own name as a board member, for example, is kind of how it plays out in reality. So it is worth getting onto, and there's lots of tools out there, so we can help walk you through that. And Julie being looking after a lot of the societies out there will have more to add on that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it's at a higher level, I think it's a kind of a legacy opportunity. So we all come onto committees and boards to do the right thing, and sometimes we come in and there are various states of ambiguity about who does what and what we're actually there for. And so the Constitution, written in plain English and contemporary, making sure that you're aligned with current law, is useful. It's a useful document. And you don't have to, it doesn't have to be all things to all people. You could have a document that simply was a compliance document, or you could add in other good governance practices fit for purpose for the size of your entity. So I see it as a one-off piece of work that does have to be done, but after that, if you're already operating with integrity and you're feeling as though you're being accountable and maintaining your reporting functions, it should be relatively business as usual. There'll be some things you have to change, but it shouldn't be significant. And for sporting organisations who sit in a federated structure with layers of boards, it's a great opportunity to connect up and down and get some help. Now, some will be getting lots of help and some won't, but regional sports trusts standing at the ready to help. There's plenty of help out there. And the one thing we're hearing from people who eventually sit down at their board table or their kitchen table and get the templates out is it's not as scary or as difficult as they first thought. So, and there are significant risks. I think reputational risk is one thing. You don't want to be on a board committee or a board and be responsible for not meeting a deadline, a legal deadline, because there are reputational issues for that, and there are certainly contractual and financial issues. So we're here to make sure that you've got what you need to get there in time.
Really great. Thank you so much, everybody. I think that just to have said it once more, it's the April 2026 deadline. It might feel like a long time, but it's actually not that long. Because remember, you might have to have meetings to prepare and get your members to vote. My encouragement is view this as a glass half full moment, because you can refresh your rules to reflect the way that you actually operate. So let's turn to another question. Who's affected? How is it affecting them differently? How will these changes impact sports clubs, marae, cultural groups, and charities differently? Anybody want to jump in on that?
Well, I think much of it is standard. There are standard rules and obligations for all of the incorporated societies. I know that it's now the ability to introduce tikanga and cultural elements to your constitution that you may not have done in the past. But for our sporting entities, I think the focus really is on helping them make good decisions and be accountable for the members that they're there for. So I don't know a lot about other entities, but I certainly think for sport entities, it's a clear pathway to having a really solid constitution that you can be comfortable working within.
Exactly. And I think a lot of the other entities as well, Julia, are in a similar boat. They're similar sort of size and structure. There's a bunch at that sort of, that we would say are big organisations, but vast majority are medium or small, and some quite small. And the changes are not actually technically too difficult, as you've said. So the new requirements are things like keeping a register of members, which you would have anyway in some way, shape or form. And it just has to be readily available for inspection by your other members or the registrar or the other, those are pretty much the big ones. it's really about transparency and good governance is what the changes are all about. So register of members is probably easy and box ticked for most. Then you have to have a register of your committee members, so your board members, your officers. Again, that's pretty easy. You have to have all of your officers consenting to be officers, which is signing a form, and then keeping it on file. And then some of the slightly more challenging ones, potentially for some, would be the financial reporting changes. So you need to figure out what tier you fit into. Again, there's a lot of good guidance out there, particularly Companies Office. The registrar has great plain English guidance on their website, and April is going to share some of those links at various points. So yeah, your filing of annual returns might just need a bit of a look at, and then there's other clauses in your constitution that need to be there, such as disputes resolution. And none of this is kind of rocket science or reinventing the wheel. It's your standard disputes resolution clause that's acceptable to a company or a incorporated society. And then, of course, because that's in your constitution, you can actually follow that process if or when you ever need to. So again, they are actually quite helpful. It's just getting your head around what's needed, essentially, which is not,
Really good. I think
Cool.
one thing to add is check if you are an incorporated society, because I've had a lot of groups that approach and actually they're charitable trusts. They're incorporated charitable trusts, so people get a bit confused, like, am I impacted? But if you're a charitable trust, you're probably not impacted. So maybe a good chance to refresh looking at what actually am I. Rachel, we're just going to keep the questions coming here. We want to get through as many as we can. And thanks everybody for your questions in the chat. We see them and we'll do our best to come back to as many as we can. But looking at the next question, what does good governance look like under the new Act? And then there's some specific things like, do officers' duties mirror company director responsibilities? What's the board in insurance? What's the board's role in ensuring compliance? Do you want to lead us off with that one?
Rachel, are you talking to Rachel? Yeah.
Rachel, maybe, or?
I was so sidetracked by the previous one, and I was just going to say, look, the big one for me in terms of how impacted groups are is how much they want to change. And that comes down to the entity piece for me. So if you're going to launch off and decide you now want to open up a limited company on the side, I've seen that, or go from like a mass number of incorporated societies down to just a couple, that's when you're going to have some big implications in other areas. Look, I think Joe and Julie will be better placed than me to look after this question, and I'm more than happy to listen to them for this one.
Well, I think we've said before, Joe, haven't we, that the officers' duties in the main are just becoming explicit where they were implicit in the past. There's always been a requirement to run a society, not just legally, but with integrity. And it's just making that more clear in the constitution there where possibly it hadn't been in the past. And again, depending on, and I think we've said it before, the size of your organisation, you make it fit for purpose. So big organisations have a lot more compliance requirements than smaller ones, but you should at least as a minimum understand what your compliance requirements are, not just for the Incorporated Societies Act, but Privacy Act, Health and Safety and the like. And there's so much information online free out there for you that it would not be difficult to find what you need to ensure that you both govern your club or regional, I'm talking sport, regional, association or NSO responsibly, but also within the law. And it does also, I think, as Rachel said, it provides you an opportunity to either do the very basic compliance requirement or add in some things that you've been thinking about for a while that might lift up your governance functions. For example, how you recruit board members onto your board. And because there's an exemption now for having to have more elected members and appointed members, you have an opportunity to mix up the mix of appointed and elected members, so those conversations can be had. And I think the thing I would go to is if there's something that's really been bugging you about running your society that's got in the way that this new legislation can help you with in your constitution, use it to tidy that up.
Yep, 100%. And you nailed it by saying that all those duties of officers, so board members, key executive staff, etc., are now quite explicitly aligned with what company directors essentially have to do. But that has actually always essentially been the case. It's just not been clear as such. And so I suppose it becomes the potential risk on the board members feel more real. But these are not actually hard concepts to understand either. So acting in good faith and in the best interests of the organisation, and what we'll see, and this will play out a lot in sport as well, is that you are maybe on a board of an incorporated society as essentially a representative of maybe a higher body or an associated body. And so you have to think about what hat you've got on when you're going into your dealings with this society or club, and think, well, actually, I'm a representative, so I'm actually looking after both, but I have to look after this society. That's quite a lot easier to navigate when you're a representative of another society with a similar purpose. But where you might be, for example, your husband might have a cleaning company that has a contract to do the cleaning at your club's premises. You're actually essentially conflicted in that decision. You stand to gain financially, or someone close to you does. And so it's things like that people, I think, aren't actually aware of. It's actually quite a simple process of, I just need to declare that, say, hey, everyone around this board table already knows, no doubt, but I have a conflict. We just need to document that, move on, remove me from the conversation, whatever's appropriate. And a lot of it's common sense, but getting some general education out there is quite helpful. And this is where putting in place those procedures and operating processes, essentially, after you re-register, makes it a whole lot easier for everybody. And I think as you go through the process of redoing your constitution, you'll spot what you don't know, essentially, or what you need to tighten up on. And there are a lot of resources out there for all of these things that help get you across the line. So it's just about putting some simple systems in place, really. And that's the beauty of it. Everyone gets upskilled and starts operating better. And you think about the legacy you can leave for your next board members, and actually be able to attract board members, because that's something we're hearing a lot as a big issue, is people, it's too much work. People are time poor, and then it's all too overwhelming. So setting up some good systems now, which is not too hard, just it helps the long-term sustainability of these organizations, which is awesome. And because at the end of the day, we're all trying to actually help communities of people do what they want to do. It's worth the effort, a bit of effort now.
That's great. Yeah, it's a chance to refresh things. And what I'm finding some groups are doing is they're opening their rules of the Constitution going, I didn't know we had this requirement. And so it's a chance to revisit and to actually make your rules reflect the way that you operate. So let's make it really practical now. Let's get into the really practical things. What would it look like for boards to re-register? How should they prepare for re-registration? What's the best way to lead this sort of a review of Constitution? And what governance processes might need to be affected? And thank you, April. She's putting the questions in the chat as well. So Rachel, do you want to lead with any thoughts on how you might go about a refresh?
Yeah, I mean, there's two things I think of. As one is, people are actually needing to take a bit of time to get people across the line. And so if you haven't started, you need to get going and let people have that time to contribute to the process. And then two kind of really specific things that I've been encouraging people, having looked at many of the older ones, is there are two areas that I see for the people to consider. One is a lot of groups in previous constitutions made comments around how they could invest funds. and a lot of them said only in cash. Now, that's great. That probably served people well, but there's lots of other opportunities now. And I think this is an opportunity to go, even if you're not right now wanting to make that change, give yourself the opportunity for the future. There's government stocks, there's other impact funds, so I think just don't limit yourself, even if you want to put criteria around it. The other one I'd say is, again, I'm seeing a lot of groups will go, oh, we never want to borrow money. I was like, well, that's great. But actually, some of the facilities that are out there, you might want in the future. So for example, if you're leasing a premise and you need a lease bond, that's actually lending, and you don't want to have to go back and revisit some of these things if you're changing. So that things like corporate cards, which is like your credit cards for people, that is a really fantastic way of risk management. But if you've already excluded that, it just makes it challenging. So feel free to kind of, have those conversations and think about, it doesn't mean you're going to go out tomorrow and borrow. It just means we would like to have the opportunity to, and think about how you might want to put some of those things in.
Great. Anyone want to add anything else there?
Well, from a sports perspective, right from the get-go, we have a cohort of about 50 chairs now who come together regularly, and they looked at this about 3 years ago and thought that a sensible way for the sports sector, who are all federated, to go ahead would be national first, regional then club, which has typically been the way it's happening. And at the same time, we've got enormous amounts of resources, including constitutional templates that have really good guidance notes. So when you go into the template, you've got someone, the guidance notes walk alongside you. So you should have all the answers that you need to do that. But in terms of setting it up, you need at least one person to lead it. It should be board or committee led. If you've got resources, paid resources, please don't necessarily give it to them because they're already busy. This is a board job to do. Set up a committee, a subcommittee, or the whole board does it, put a plan in place, work back now from the 5th of April and get your deadlines. When are you going to have the AGM, or do you have to have an SGM? And then decide whether you're going to do a full review of your current constitution or whether you just want to do an update of your existing one, and then get a template as a guidance. You can go on to the Companies Office if you want to use their constitution builder. Ours, Sport New Zealand's, are sports specific, so they would probably be more useful in the national, regional and club specific templates. So go in and have a look at a comparative document and then start either from scratch or by comparing your current one and updating it. But put a deadline in place, get committed to do it, and try not to do it and update it on the 5th of April. There will be a rush to the end, and there are some small processes that you have to do the uploading, including having a Real Me identity, as I understand, or an account. So don't leave it. Try not to leave it to the last minute unless you just love working like that and the buzz gets you across the line. Wouldn't me, but get a plan in place and then stick to it. And if you're really in trouble, flick me an email. I'll put my email address in here and I can see who I can put you on to. I can't do the work for you, and I certainly can't review constitutions, but if you're really stuck, please sing out and get in touch with your RST, and certainly try and connect in with your national body or the next layer up, and then get going with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or a glass of wine, probably not, but whatever gets you underway, start.
Yeah, that's the key
advice. I know, Joe, you've got a lot of expertise in this area in terms of governance and reviews and things. What would you say?
I would say precisely what Julie's just said, start, because it's not quite as overwhelming once you do get started. And if you start now, you can do it yourself. And this is the whole point, is we're trying to provide some good tools. But if you do get stuck, then you have a chance to sing out for some help. And as Julie said, if you're in the sports sector, you kind of look up who's my governing body above me. It's probably the same for a bunch of other sectors, health, education, etc. Or it is, I think I've used the example before that the RSA governing body has a constitution, a template constitution and guidance on their website. So you will probably have have somebody to look to give you some really good templates. I know actually, Stephen, you guys have some really good guidance, templates, webinars, all sorts on your websites as well. Get started, sing out for help. There's actually, if you really just need to get yourself sort of across the line this year and want to go back and do a stage 2 next year and build it back in that kind of nuance, those nuance clauses that you had in your old constitution, if it's all too much for now, go and use that constitution builder tool on the MB Companies Office website, get yourself re-registered and don't have any disruption to your organisation and put anyone at extra risk, etc. And then go and look to build in the nuance later. So there's lots of options out there. We're doing a redrafting service where sometimes we actually end up suggesting you use a brand new constitution and then we build your nuance into it, which is much easier to do than to edit your existing constitution. And sometimes we see them having been engineered in 1950, and they're very fascinating. And in fact, you can't even actually in plain English tell at all what they're saying for a lot of the clauses. So just using a builder tool like that, you're in a really good place to start with. I would also say that you need to, so the other key thing is, because you actually need your constitution, so the constitution is the big thing to get across the line on, and then registration after that is quite simple. That's the big hurdle. You need to hold a general meeting to have your members approve it, and you need to have enough, a quorum there to approve it. So you need to look at what your current constitution says in terms of meeting that requirement. Hopefully you get your constitution passed by your members at that meeting. If you don't have an AGM between now and I would say at the latest middle of March, you would need to hold a special general meeting of members. So call another meeting. Again, you have to look at what your current constitution says in terms of 2 weeks notice for the to put out the papers, etc., advise everybody. Get that in train, get that set up, because as I said with Christmas, you don't even want to be dealing with this in December, January, or really even February, and then you're getting really close.
Because the 5th of, as I understand it, it's the deadline is around Easter. So you don't really want to be doing it at Easter either, unless you want to do it at Easter, but
Yeah, and you can do it pretty quickly. You just need somebody driving the train, essentially. So yeah, I would just suggest just get planning, put a timeline in place, and get everyone working to that timeline, because otherwise it's it never happens. It's one of those tasks you got to break down into multiple steps.
You make a good point about members. If the sooner you can let your members know what you're doing, and the sooner you can surface any particular issues that members might have, the easier it will be for you to be able to get your constitution across the line at the AGM. So try and engage members early, whether they're individual members or whether, if you're a sport organisation, whether they are other organisations, have early conversations, surface any particular issues, try and get those addressed. And then I really agree with you, Joe, if it's getting very difficult, just put up a compliant constitution and go back later and iron out anything that's contentious if it's not related to compliance. Because in a federated structure, the members also will have to get themselves across the line because of the downsides of missing the deadline. So that should be an impetus for everyone to at least have a basic compliant constitution, and then have the discussion and debate about the peripheral important elements afterwards, because you're still functioning and no one else has taken your name, for example, because you no longer exist.
Really good advice we're getting. Thanks, everybody. And thanks for the comments in the chat as well. April, we might need to go through some of the questions and see if we can respond afterwards, because I'm not sure we're going to get to everything. One thing I'd add is this is also a moment to refresh thinking, should we be an incorporated society? Because for some groups, you were set up 30 years ago and there was 300 members. Now there's 5 people left. So it might be worth thinking, should we transition to be a charitable trust instead? And there's good guidance on this. We've written articles and videos on it as well. I'm going to keep the conversation going though. How do these changes support or challenge kaupapa Māori governance? Are tikanga and kawa recognized in the new constitution requirements? Who'd like to start that one off?
I can get that started. So I think this is actually quite cool. So constitutions can be written in Te Reo Māori, and the new Act sets out a series of mandatory constitutional requirements, and those are the things we've talked about, like purposes, rules, duties of officers, etc. And while these are all always framed in a Western legal model, the Act gives societies the scope to design their own systems within that framework. So for kaupapa Māori societies, this is, I guess, a challenge and an opportunity. The challenge is that the Act requires formal, written, and compliance-driven governance that many hapu or whānau-based entities may not be used to. But the opportunity is that tikanga and kawa can be deliberately written into constitutions. For example, using tikanga-based disputes resolutions processes and consensus hui-type processes for decision-making as guiding purposes. So you do have a lot of flexibility. The Act doesn't explicitly recognise tikanga, so it doesn't exclude it either, but societies that wish to really embed this, and this is really a cultural thing a lot of the time, that you want to be bringing that flavour into everything you do, as long as you are ensuring you meet the statutory baselines and not, making things read differently to how they need to be compliant, then it creates a really good space for, I guess, that bicultural governance design. So I think this is actually a really exciting step forward in New Zealand legislation.
Agree.
My thoughts.
Add anything on that, but I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, we haven't seen a lot of that here previously. And my one thing, and it probably goes back to even some of the older existing clients that we have, is that actually we sometimes go and get legal advice ourselves to understand what an organisation is asking us to do. So as long as it's really clear what you're wanting, we can follow your instructions. And so regardless of how it's written, that's really critical. And if we can't understand, then we'll go off and get legal advice, and it just creates delays for any organisation. So yeah, but it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out.
That's really great. Thank you. A quick one in the chat. I see, can we change our name as part of the process? You can, but it is actually a separate thing that you do to change your name. So it's not in the exact same moment. So you'd have to build it in. Always go back and look at what your rules say, because usually there will be a clause which says what you need to do to change the name. So we're keeping things going. What's the biggest barrier that you've been seeing to re-registering societies? Time, cost, uncertainty, anything else? Anyone thoughts on that? Because it might help people who are listening.
Can I pick up the name thing first and just say, you can change your name, but please let your bank know, and just otherwise that does create all sorts of interesting conversations down the track. I've got incorporated societies who aren't incorporated societies anymore. I've got, you name it, I've seen it. And it's so just talk to your bank. But the reality is, be careful, because if you're changing some people change the name, but then they've called it another legal entity, and so then it's like it's just understanding the implications of what you're doing and whether that was actually what you intended to do, because that will then potentially create some other issues in other areas of what you do. Sorry, Stephen, probably derailed that. Yeah.
No, it's great. And that's why it's so good to have such different perspectives, because I totally understand. You need to tell your bank that you change your name, and it might have other impacts too in terms of contracts, and you need to keep people informed about who you are. But also this could be a chance to rebrand, like what logo are we using, and maybe we change our name, and this is a chance to get a membership drive going and increase the scope of what we're doing. So turning to the next question, the one I asked before, what's the biggest barrier that you're seeing? Julie, Joe, maybe start with you. Is it the time, the cost, and uncertainty, or anything you want to add to this?
I wouldn't mind asking those present, because I'm assuming that those present haven't re-registered. I might be wrong. But before I give you an idea about what I think and what we're hearing, is anyone brave enough to give us a bit of a feel for what's been preventing you from getting re-registered up to now?
I think, and while people are answering, because that would be really, really great to get that feedback. What we've heard to date is just the overwhelm of not understanding what is required, how to go about it. It feels quite legal, feeling like you don't have the legal skills in-house, which is not necessary. You just need someone with a bit of determination to get the job done. And I think also there's a bit of a belief that there's not really going to be any consequences, that the deadline will come and go, and we'll carry on until we get told that we really have to, etc. Things like that. And then also not having there's the time burden, right? Because they're often volunteer-based roles. Even if they're not, it's still a time burden. Everybody faces that. And then a cost element too, if you want to outsource. So there's a lot at play. And often it can be a bit of a combination of those. And Stephen's probably, although I feel like he's probably got an airport call going over right now, is probably well placed to answer some of those as well, because you've seen this play out with your clients.
Yeah, I have for sure. I do have to go jump on my plane. It was kind of a last minute thing that I was helping facilitate, so apologies. Yeah, I think in the chat people are putting some great experiences, and it's the time, the uncertainty. So I echo that. But also I think there's a barrier that people think it's harder than it is. So I would just encourage, if you're listening to this, grab hold of it. Glass half full. This is a moment to refresh and reinvent your entity to become even better than you've been. So that would be my encouragement. We'll keep things moving maybe. And the real big question that I want you to be thinking about is, if you could give one bit of advice to the people listening and some real world examples, what would it be? Because I'm going to log off, but you're going to keep talking. But before we get to that, what sort of support are you seeing being available? I think the four of us here, we would probably be happy if people want to reach out to us. If someone's got a question, just reach out. But what support are you seeing that's available? Maybe you can mention so that everybody can be directed. And then maybe you can turn to that question, some real world examples of societies that, that are re-registering, what's working well, what could they have done differently? And apologies, I'm going to log off because they're calling me, but keep up the good work, everybody. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen.
Well, I've got a lovely example, if I can share it, non-attributably, but I got a phone call about 4 months ago from a volunteer up in the north of the North Island, and they have a very small scope of work to do. They send a team to a competition once a year, and they get funding for that. And she wondered what, whether she needed to do anything, and B, what she could do. So I sent her the right template. And I think on her own, or maybe with a couple of committee members, they got it all tidied up. She emailed me about 2 or 3 weeks or maybe a month later and said, oh, actually it wasn't as difficult as possible. We sat down over a coffee and a muffin, or 2 or 3 sessions, and got it all done, and we've sent it up, and we re-registered, and we're getting our teams organised for the next competition. So it's not difficult. And I think the only other thing I've heard in the chat is it can seem daunting because there's too much information. But if you're going to just pick a trusted source of information. Like our templates have been developed by a legal firm. You can certainly trust the Incorporated Societies Companies Office Constitution template because that's been developed by lawyers. Stephen Moe is a lawyer and his firms are legal folk. So don't go anywhere you're a bit suspicious, but pick a template or pick a source of information. Trust that it's reputable. If you can't, especially if you can't get legal advice, if you can, do a draft and get someone that you trust to have a look at the draft and then get it signed off at your AGM and put it up. So try and remove that overwhelm of too much information by selecting one source of information and trusting that. And then just back yourself. It's not, as Joe said, once you dive into that constitution, unless it's, written in, I don't know, pen 70 years ago and illegible, and using all of that legal jargon, in which case start again from scratch. It's a great thing to read through a constitution and remember what's in there and remove the things that you don't want anymore, keep the ones that are absolutely required, and at the end of it all, you'll feel a great sense of satisfaction, I'm sure. Yeah, so just get going.
Yeah, 100%. Fully agree. And I think it was interesting that the name change thing came up already, because this is one of the examples I was going to give is we've seen a couple of societies have their re-registration rejected because they haven't used the right naming conventions. So, for example, they might have Inc. You've got to have incorporated in your name, but you might have Inc. as your existing name, but it actually has to be incorporated, and you might have brackets somewhere in your constitution around incorporated, and then in other places not have the brackets, and those things can trip you up. You don't know what level of checking is going to be done on your constitution when you re-register. But then again, it's a legal document, so you actually need to get that right anyway, really, to avoid other potential issues. So it can be quite little things, and again, this is probably not helping reduce people's anxiety levels, but it's not hard to get all of that right. And the good thing is that when you re-register, if you do have something small like that that's not correct, the Companies Office are going to come back to you and say, hey, X, Y, and Z needs to be dealt with. And so if you do it now, you actually have that opportunity. And then again, it's something you need to check your constitution for. But if you get pushed back on, you often will have the ability to make really minor changes, which are immaterial, like that, where you can just correct a name that was obviously not correct in some parts of your constitution, for example, and resubmit without having to go back to a full member meeting. And I'd really suggest that you get in touch with the Companies Office as well, particularly where you need to take something back to your members, or you think you do, and just get clarification, because that can eliminate a whole lot of time burden. But as Stephen said as well, all of us we'd love for you to reach out and just ask whatever questions you'd like, because there's little things like that you might be stuck on. And then we can also, a lot of the time, we'll redirect you to other resources that are really helpful for that. And there's lots of lawyers doing these constitutional reviews pro bono or a final review. There's a lot of builders out there. Look within your industry. I can't kind of stress that enough, because this is the overwhelm of it, is not knowing where to start. And then even though if you read through your constitution, which might feel hefty because it's 30 pages, if you've worked through a constitution tool builder, for example, on the Companies Office website, and then you read through your constitution, you'll be able to quite easily identify what are the things that are special and specific about our society that we want to build in. You can build that in actually quite easily, because you've had honestly, just having a read through both versions you don't have to be a lawyer, you know, you'll get it, and you'll probably be able to just bring a few things across and you're done. But then there are other options out there, heaps of other options, but it's just kind of specific to your industry. Don't discount using AI to help guide you. I would also say don't rely on AI to write your constitution for you. We use AI a lot. I'm sure everyone else is going to have the same experience, but it sometimes doesn't even copy paste exact legislative wording correctly, so it can misguide you, but it can be very helpful to give you a plan of attack and highlight the things that your constitution needs to be done differently. Where you need to change your constitution, for example. It can use it to some extent, but don't rely on things like that. Again, if you do it now, Companies Office can guide you on what you haven't done right. There's a bunch of other interesting things that people have fallen short on, I guess, because you need to build in your new requirements. So, for example, your disputes resolution procedure needs to basically be the general one that you can get online anywhere. Any template constitution will have pretty much the same thing. And then you might change it for your nuance, but you've changed one particular thing that doesn't align with the Act. That's probably a bad example because I'm not saying that that's where it happens, but get those core elements in there that you know you need to have, highlight them, and try not to play around with them, and then work on changing the rest of it, is the way I'd go about it. And if you're not sure, reach out to one of us for advice, or I don't know, there's lots of options, but go to the Companies Office for guidance is kind of the key thing, because they are really wanting everyone to get across the line and wanting to help. It's just that it's hard for them to do that in a nuanced way. Hence the Constitution Builder tool is their main guiding tool.
And I think the tool is, you know, many people have used it. They're finding it pretty accessible. I think there's probably a couple of things in that as we kind of reach this mass now, you know, thousands that still need to go, you know, they're going to get overwhelmed. So if you've got questions, now is definitely the time. Easter Sunday, no one's going to be responding, you know, so get onto it. And I think from my mind, start with the tools that are available. They are good. They're really good for the standard. I think if you're a really complex organization where you're changing entities, that's when you really need some insight. And that will be really, really helpful. And what we are finding is actually they're not checking everything as it goes through. And I think as we get closer to the deadline, they simply won't be able to check them. We're finding even as a bank, when we're going to onboard these entities now, we're picking up some of the issues and going, look, actually, this probably doesn't meet what you need. You probably need to go back and have a relook at it. So, you know, you might not get picked up by them, but you might get picked up somewhere else when someone else is trying to help you with something. Ultimately, we're just trying to help you guys do what you've said you want to do and how you want to do it. You know, we're not trying to put barriers in, we're just trying to follow your instructions to us. I think for me, it is very much that if it's a complex change with entity types, you need to engage with your bank. I know BNZ's updated its website now. You can search incorporated societies, and we've got a form there going out to a specialised team. I'm sure others will follow with whatever they're going to do. But look, don't get overwhelmed. Get started. Don't be someone who's trying to make mass changes close to Easter. We all know what New Zealand's like. We'll all be on holiday. Or at a competition for all you sports clubs.
Exactly. We haven't really dealt with any questions. Well, I certainly haven't in the chat, April. Was there anything that you wanted us to cover with the minutes we have left? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, lots of great questions in the chat. I think we may need to come back to some of them after the talk. So if you all have any chance to type any questions, responses, to those questions, the panel, feel free to. I think, yeah, to highlight, we do have a number of resources that we've put in the chat throughout the call. So we'll aim to get something out to everyone that has those links, so you can check those out. The information, constitution builders, everything there.
Just one quick question I saw, but I can't find it. I'm assuming the Companies Office can advise people where English is a second language. They can advise. I saw a question around there about English, because it's all in English, obviously. The Companies Office would be the place to go if there were language barriers. Yeah.
I know that Stephen Moe has some resources that are translated. I definitely remember, I think I saw Chinese, but there's, so he definitely has some there as well.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, just to wrap up, can we just do a quick fire round of our panelists? What would be your quick 2 or 3 sentence summary? What are your sort of takeaways that you would give to people to take away from today?
Pick an approach, start from scratch, or adapt the one you've already got. Find a resource that you trust the information of to do a comparison with. Identify the small group of people who are going to do it, set timelines in place, and try and get it done by the end of the year. I'd be doing. So you can enjoy Christmas, not get indigestion over your Christmas dinner because you still got to do it.
Can't believe we're already talking Christmas. Yeah, I would say exactly the same thing, and reach out to those that you're probably, a lot of societies will actually have a lawyer or a quasi-lawyer amongst. Tap into any help you've got, big borrow steal. And just it's actually just a confidence thing, essentially, to get started. Once you're going, it's not too bad. There's lots of, so April will actually, maybe April, if you're able to, there's a bunch of resources that we sent you links to that I think you've shared some throughout, but perhaps if you just tap them all in the chat now, could be helpful. So there is Sport New Zealand's resources, there's the Constitution Builder with Companies Office, there's a lot of their guidance pages, our IGS Constitution Redrafting Service, which is basic compliance, get you across the line kind of approach, and affordable. And then there's other platforms and all sorts of things that you can be looking at. And so we're working with Decreed to do we're launching a compliance platform. So this is ongoing compliance, but it has a lot of guidance around, has guides, etc., around how to actually redraft your constitutions. So if April puts those into the chat, and we'll share them after as well. And Rachel might have some to add to that, unless you already have and I haven't seen them. Again, also put Stephen's Parry Field Lawyers website link there, because they have a huge amount of awesome content and are obviously available to help with redrafting constitutions, etc. So lots of options there. But as Julie said, pick a source you trust, which is an organizational reputable body, or a law firm or something like that.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's like, look, get started. And if you're the kind of group that needs a burning platform to get your group going, trust me, they'll still want access to their bank accounts after that date. And so if that's what you need to use to motivate, use it if you need it. And, just get cracking. But the online resources are good on this. Lots of really small groups have got on and got through and made it out the other side. It's a great opportunity to revisit and make your own documentation actually accessible to your members and to the people you're trying to serve and your purpose. And it's a great chance to refresh that purpose. Is it still what you're here for? So make the most of it. Yeah.
Awesome. Ngā mihi nui. Thank you so much to each of our panel members, and for your really practical and helpful advice that you've given. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you for your questions. We will send out those resources. Yes, there's one that's an FAQ, so hopefully actually some of your questions might be answered in there as well. Or reach out to these guys, keep in contact with us. You can reach us at info@communitygovernance.org.nz, check out our website. But thank you so much for making time today, and wishing you all a great afternoon. Mā
All
te
the
wā.
best. Thanks for doing what you do.